Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. Rasul Douglas, the cornerback whose name has been buzzing around NFL circles for months, finally arrived at the Miami Dolphins headquarters this morning, sparking a wave of excitement, speculation, and a hint of mystery. From the moment rumors about potential defensive moves by the Dolphins began circulating, fans have been divided, some thrilled at the prospect of an immediate reinforcement and others cautious, wondering if he could truly fit into Miami's defensive scheme. As he stepped out of his car, Douglas appeared focused, yet the determined glint in his eyes suggested he was already envisioning the impact he could have on the team. Reporters scrambled, cameras clicking relentlessly, yet he remained silent, letting the surrounding speculation speak for itself. There's no denying that his arrival in a team striving to solidify its secondary creates an inevitable buzz, and discussions about who might lose their starting spot only intensify the tension. Known for bold and sometimes surprising moves, the Dolphins now find themselves on the edge of a potential tactical transformation, with fans and analysts debating whether this signing represents a strategic masterstroke or a calculated risk. Douglas is more than just a name. He embodies the promise of a renewed defensive future that excites curiosity while fueling anticipation, a narrative resonating both inside the Dolphins' halls and across social media platforms. The city itself seems to inhale along with the player, as fans imagine the mark he could leave on upcoming games, while sports analysts speculate on adjustments the defensive system might require. Meanwhile, rumors continued swirling about the financial aspects of Douglas' impending four-year contract, which sources suggest could significantly influence the Dolphins' salary dynamics and long-term strategic planning. Every move he made, from entering administrative offices to subtle gestures during informal meetings with the coaching staff, was scrutinized, magnifying the sense of suspense. Analysts and insiders debated his reading of the game, his anticipation skills, and whether he could maintain consistent performance under the intense pressures of the NFL. Some experts emphasized that Douglas' track record and ability to anticipate opponents' plays could make him a defensive cornerstone, while others cautioned that adaptation challenges could impact his immediate effectiveness. Social media quickly became a hotbed for predictions and speculations, with fans oscillating between optimism and skepticism. Each rumor, whether about private workouts, strategic meetings, or depth chart adjustments, fueled a collective imagination eager for scenarios involving game-changing plays and leadership contributions. Douglas' arrival wasn't merely about adding talent to the roster. It represented a potential identity shift for the defense, a story of expectations, calculated risks, and evolving narratives. Every gesture, glance, and interaction now contributed to a complex tale where reality and speculation intertwined seamlessly, keeping all eyes fixed on what could become the next defining chapter in the Miami Dolphins' defensive saga. Behind the scenes, Douglas' arrival sparked heated discussions among commentators and former players, debating the impact he could have on team balance. Historically marked by fluctuating defensive performances, the Dolphins' secondary seemed poised for a new identity, with anticipation growing over how Douglas would integrate into existing schemes. Some analysts predicted his ability to cover fast receivers might solve long-standing challenges, while others stressed the necessity of tactical adjustments to maximize his skill set. Rumors about private meetings, individual evaluations, and potential on-field combinations further fueled speculation, creating a narrative that merged professional assessment with fan imagination. The signing of a four-year contract, long enough to build expectations but also pressure, signaled both commitment and responsibility. The media eagerly documented each micro-expression and interaction, knowing that these early impressions could evolve into compelling storylines for months. Meanwhile, fans, caught between hope and anxiety, pondered whether Douglas would elevate the team's defensive performance immediately or face hurdles in adapting to a new system. Every whisper, observation, and speculative report added to a crescendo of excitement surrounding a player whose name had already become synonymous with potential defensive transformation in Miami. Inside the Dolphins' headquarters, the atmosphere mirrored the frenzy outside, filled with bustling hallways, strategy meetings, and a palpable sense of expectation. Douglas' arrival was more than a routine signing. It represented a catalyst for a series of decisions shaping the immediate future of the team. Attentive observers noticed subtle shifts in coaching behavior, potential training adjustments, and discreet conversations exploring defensive combinations that could optimize Douglas' abilities. The buzz surrounding his contract reverberated beyond the building, captivating fans, analysts, and even rival teams curious about the impact of this strategic move. Some speculated he could emerge as a silent leader, influencing teammates and elevating overall defensive standards, while others warned of the inherent risks of tactical changes requiring patience and adjustment. Meanwhile, journalists meticulously captured every moment, aware that the day's narrative could develop into a significant sports story. Douglas' arrival was no longer just a rumor. It marked the beginning of a complex chapter blending hope, pressure, and speculation, ensuring that all eyes remained on the Miami Dolphins as they prepared for what could be one of the most talked-about defensive shifts of the season. The buzz about Douglas, extending far beyond the Dolphins' headquarters, rapidly spread across social media, forums, and sports discussion channels, where fans and experts debated with intensity. Every statistic, previous performance highlight, and analysis of his strengths and weaknesses became a topic of conversation, amplifying anticipation. While some praised his game-reading abilities, anticipation, and speed, others recalled moments of inconsistency, generating a mixture of excitement and doubt. This duality heightened the rumor's allure, as no one could precisely predict how he would adapt to a new system, teammates, and the pressure to meet expectations. The 4-year contract signaled confidence, but also added accountability, amplifying scrutiny over performance and adaptation. Fans created imaginative scenarios, anticipating interceptions, coverage success, and decisive plays, while analysts discussed necessary tactical adjustments to leverage Douglas' talent effectively. Each rumor seemed to take on a life of its own, turning the narrative into something cinematic, with spectators eagerly awaiting developments that could reshape not just Miami's defense, but public perception of the team. As Douglas walked the halls of the Dolphins' headquarters, the sports world seemed to orbit around his name, transforming speculation into tangible anticipation, collective excitement, and eagerness for what lies ahead. The arrival of Rasul Douglas and the rumors surrounding his 4-year contract fueled intense speculation about roster adjustments, particularly among cornerbacks and safeties who might be affected by his presence. Analysts debated potential shifts in playing time, tactical recalibrations, and how the team could balance experience and youth in the secondary. Expectations were high that Douglas would contribute not only through physical skill, but also with silent leadership, guiding teammates and enhancing the group's defensive maturity. Rumors of private meetings with coaching staff reinforced the narrative that he was preparing for a significant role, shaping plays and influencing strategy. Enthusiasm and skepticism coexisted, sparking discussions across social media, podcasts, and sports news channels, providing opportunities for detailed analysis, predictions, and speculation about the implications of his arrival. Every rumor, observation, and insider tip contributed to a sense that this signing wasn't merely routine, but the start of a story potentially redefining the Dolphins' defensive identity, style of play, and position within the NFL over the coming years. With anticipation at its peak, fans and analysts wondered how Rasul Douglas would adjust to the demands of the Miami Dolphins, what immediate impact he might have during practice and games, and how the coaching staff would deploy his skills strategically. Every rumor, every subtle clue captured by journalists became fodder for debate, with fans imagining interceptions, perfect coverage, and game-defining moments. The 4-year deal not only demonstrated organizational confidence, but also created natural pressure for Douglas to meet expectations, justify his investment, and solidify his position as a defensive cornerstone. The narrative surrounding his arrival carried emotional weight, blending expectations, excitement, and collective anxiety into an irresistible rumor-driven story. Meanwhile, the city, fans, and broader sports community watched every movement, expression, and interaction, aware that this signing could mark the start of a new defensive era for the Dolphins, full of hope, speculation, and possibilities, where each future game would serve as a stage for evaluating the impact of a rumor that had already grown into a compelling sports saga of immense anticipation. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Finns this week? As the story of Rasul Douglas' arrival continued to unfold, speculation intensified about how his presence could reshape the Dolphins' defensive identity, with insiders and fans alike dissecting every possible angle. From potential positional adjustments to changes in coverage schemes, discussions swirled endlessly, fueled by glimpses of his early interactions with coaching staff and teammates. Analysts debated whether Douglas' ability to anticipate plays would allow him to become a disruptive force in the secondary, or whether the pressures of adapting to a new environment might temporarily limit his impact. Social media platforms became virtual war rooms, with fans creating hypothetical scenarios, projecting interceptions, forced fumbles, and game-changing moments before he even stepped on the field. Meanwhile, whispers from inside the organization suggested that the coaching staff was already considering how to maximize his unique skill set, experimenting with alignment options and pairing him strategically against opponents' top receivers. The 4-year contract, rumored to be both financially significant and strategically structured, became a focal point for evaluating the team's long-term vision, indicating that Douglas' arrival was intended as more than a short-term fix. Every movement, every subtle gesture during his first hours with the Dolphins added layers to the narrative, turning a simple signing into a spectacle of anticipation, uncertainty, and potential transformation, where fans and experts alike waited with bated breath for tangible proof of what the rumors promised. Inside the Dolphins facility, the atmosphere was electric, charged with the weight of expectations surrounding Douglas' integration. Team members, from veteran players to rookies, were reportedly observing him closely, attempting to gauge how his style of play, communication, and leadership could affect the locker room dynamic. Analysts speculated that his presence might spark competition for starting positions, motivating others to elevate their performance, or potentially creating strategic conflicts if adjustments were not managed carefully. Reports hinted at private strategy sessions in which coaches discussed leveraging Douglas' range, anticipation, and tackling abilities to complement the existing secondary framework. Fans continued to dissect these developments online, theorizing on potential snap counts, coverage rotations, and matchup scenarios, each discussion amplifying the rumor mill. The narrative surrounding Douglas had evolved from simple reporting to a collective imagination of what he could achieve, blending statistical analysis, personal expectations, and speculative foresight. Even off-field details, like his arrival routines, demeanor during interviews, and interactions with staff, became fodder for scrutiny, feeding the story of a player poised to redefine Miami's defensive landscape. In this sense, the excitement was not merely about his abilities, but about the cultural, strategic, and psychological ripple effects he might introduce, making every moment of observation a point of speculation and conversation. Speculation also intensified regarding the broader implications of Douglas' 4-year deal, with financial analysts and sports commentators suggesting that the contract could impact future roster decisions and draft strategies. Rumors circulated that certain players might be repositioned, benched, or even traded to accommodate his presence, igniting debate over whether the Dolphins were prioritizing immediate defensive strength over long-term flexibility. Fans analyzed every potential outcome, from matchups in prime games to scenarios involving playoff positioning, with some predicting a near-immediate boost in defensive efficiency, while others cautioned that adaptation periods could temper expectations. Internal discussions within the team, often hinted at through anonymous sources, suggested that Douglas was being groomed not only as a starter, but as a potential mentor for younger defenders, a role that could solidify the secondary's cohesion and performance. Meanwhile, social media speculation reached fever pitch, with fans debating potential interception totals, defensive rankings, and even the subtle psychological impact of his presence on rival quarterbacks. Each rumor, observation, and analytical projection reinforced the idea that Douglas' arrival was more than a routine transaction. It was an event capable of altering Miami's defensive identity, narrative, and trajectory, and every stakeholder, from coaches to fans, was now engaged in this unfolding story of expectation, promise, and strategic intrigue. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.